The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Maddie stood in front of me, her white wedding dress shimmering under the reception hall lights. Her smile was sharp, almost cruel. "Just a fun little wedding gift," she said sweetly. "Open it." 50 guests watched as I tore the seal. Inside was a DNA ancestry report with my name on it. My stomach dropped. The room went silent as I scanned the results. Words jumped out at me, paternal lineage inconsistent with stated family records. I looked up at Maddie. She was grinning, waiting for my reaction. Waiting for tears. Waiting for me to crumble in front of everyone. But then I noticed something else on the paper. A second test. Maddie's name was on it too. My heart pounded as I read further. The results didn't just expose me. They exposed her. We both had different biological fathers than the man who raised us. Neither of us was Robert Tate's biological daughter. Maddie had planned this moment for months. She wanted to humiliate me at her wedding, to prove once and for all that I didn't belong. But she had made a terrible mistake. She had included her own test results without reading them carefully. The weapon she aimed at me had fired backward. I sat frozen at the reception table. The laughter and clinking glasses around me faded into a dull hum. My mind raced through the words on that paper over and over again. Different biological father. Both of us. Maddie had returned to her husband Connor's side, still smiling, still basking in her moment. She thought she had won. She thought I was sitting here devastated, broken, ready to run away in shame. She had no idea what she had just handed me. I looked at my parents across the room. Dad was laughing at something Uncle Thomas said. Mom was adjusting the flowers on the head table. They looked happy, normal, completely unaware that their carefully kept secrets were now printed on paper in my trembling hands. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and demand answers. But something stopped me. A calm voice in my head said, "Think, Frankie. Think carefully." Maddie had planned this attack for maximum damage. She wanted witnesses. She wanted my humiliation to be public and permanent. But she had miscalculated badly. I slipped the papers back into the envelope and placed them in my purse. I forced myself to smile. Tonight, I would observe. Tomorrow, I would plan. Maddie had started a war she didn't know she had already lost. My name is Frankie Tate. I was 28 years old, a marketing consultant at a small firm downtown. I had spent my entire life in Maddie's shadow. Growing up, Maddie was everything I wasn't. She was loud where I was quiet. She was confident where I was shy. She was beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare, while I blended into the background like furniture. Our parents adored her. Teachers favored her. Boys chased her. And me? I was the other daughter. The one people forgot was even in the room. Maddie had mastered the art of making me feel small. She would borrow my things and never return them. She would mock my clothes, my hair, my dreams. She would tell family members embarrassing stories about me and laugh when I cried. I learned to survive by being invisible. I kept my head down, worked hard, and built a quiet life away from her drama. I thought distance would protect me. But Maddie couldn't stand being ignored. She needed an audience for her cruelty. She needed me present to remind everyone that she was the star and I was nothing. This wedding was supposed to be her ultimate triumph. Instead, she had handed me the tools for her destruction. I looked across the crowded reception hall. Maddie was dancing with Connor, her new husband. Her dress sparkled. Her laugh echoed above the music. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. But I knew better. Behind that perfect smile was a calculating mind. Every move she made was deliberate. Every word was chosen for maximum effect. She had spent months planning this wedding, and the DNA test wasn't a random gift. It was the centerpiece of her plan. I noticed Jenna watching from the corner. Jenna had been Maddie's best friend since college. She was a bridesmaid, dressed in pale pink, holding a champagne glass. But her expression was strange. She wasn't smiling. Our eyes met briefly. Jenna looked away quickly, almost guiltily. Interesting. I scanned the room for other reactions. Cousin Brooke was whispering to Aunt Patricia near the dessert table. They kept glancing at me. Had Maddie told them what she planned to do? Were they in on it? My grandmother sat alone at a corner table. Her eyes were sharp, watching everything. She had always been observant, the kind of woman who noticed details others missed. I tucked these observations away. Every glance, every whisper, every nervous look was data. I would need all of it. During dinner, I positioned myself near the head table. Maddie was accepting congratulations from relatives, her voice carrying across the room. I pretended to fix my napkin while listening carefully. She has no idea, Maddie whispered to Cousin Brooke. Did you see her face when she opened it? Priceless. Brooke giggled nervously. Aren't you worried she'll cause a scene? Frankie? Maddie laughed. She's too weak. She'll probably cry in the bathroom and then pretend nothing happened. That's what she always does. My hands clenched under the table. Years of her mockery flashed through my mind. The times she had stolen my boyfriends. The times she had ruined my birthday parties. The time she had told everyone at our family reunion that I had failed out of college, when really I had transferred to a better school. But this time was different. This time, I held the cards. Maddie continued talking, oblivious to my presence. Mom and Dad will finally see her for what she is. An outsider. Not really one of us. She didn't know that the same words applied to her. She hadn't read her own results carefully. She had been so focused on destroying me that she missed the bomb hidden in her own paperwork. I smiled and took a sip of water. Later that evening, I slipped into the bridal suite while Maddie was taking photos outside. The room smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Her makeup scattered across the vanity, along with jewelry, hairpins, and a familiar envelope. She had left a copy of the DNA tests here. Careless. I picked it up and studied it more carefully than I had at the reception. The results were clear. My biological father was someone other than Robert Tate. That part Maddie knew and wanted to expose. But on her results, buried in the genetic marker section, was the same revelation. Different paternal lineage. Different biological father. We were both secrets our mother had kept. My mind raced through possibilities. Had Mom had affairs with two different men? Did Dad know? Was our entire family built on lies? I photographed every page with my phone. Then I placed the papers exactly where I had found them. Maddie could never know I had seen this. The door handle rattled. I slipped behind the bathroom door just as Maddie burst in, laughing with her bridesmaids. They were talking about the cake cutting. I waited until they left for the ceremony and then quietly exited. The evidence was safe in my phone. Now I needed a plan. That night, I sat in my hotel room and stared at the photographs on my phone. The truth was explosive, but I couldn't just throw it out carelessly. That was Maddie's mistake. She had acted without thinking, driven by cruelty instead of strategy. I would not make the same error. My approach had to be methodical. I needed to understand the full picture before I made any moves. Who else knew about these secrets? How long had Mom been hiding this? Did Dad suspect anything? More importantly, I needed allies. Maddie had spent years positioning herself as the golden child. She had friends, supporters, people who believed her version of reality. If I came out swinging without support, everyone would dismiss me as jealous or crazy. I thought about Jenna's strange expression at the reception. Something was off there. Jenna had looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. Maybe she knew more than she was showing. I made a mental list of steps. First, gather more information. Second, identify potential allies. Third, plant seeds of doubt. Fourth, let Maddie destroy herself. This wasn't about petty revenge. This was about justice. Maddie had tried to humiliate me using a truth I never asked for. Now that same truth would expose her hypocrisy. I set my alarm and finally slept. The next morning, I found Maddie at the hotel breakfast buffet. She was glowing, surrounded by relatives offering congratulations. When she saw me approach, her smile turned predatory. "Frankie, how are you feeling this morning?" Her voice dripped with false concern. "You looked a little pale last night." I smiled warmly. "I'm fine. Actually, that was quite a gift you gave me." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Oh? I thought you might find it interesting." "Very interesting," I agreed. I had no idea ancestry tests could reveal so much. The genetic markers are fascinating. They show all kinds of patterns across family lines. I watched her expression carefully. She didn't flinch. She hadn't read her own results. "Anyway," I continued, "I was thinking we should get tests for Mom and Dad too. Make it a whole family project. Wouldn't that be fun?" Now she flinched. Just a tiny movement, barely visible. But I caught it. "That's not necessary," she said quickly. "Those tests are expensive." "I'll pay for it," I offered. "Consider it my gift to the family." Maddie's smile was frozen now. She excused herself to find Connor. I watched her go, satisfaction warming my chest. The first move was made. Grandma found me sitting alone on the hotel terrace that afternoon. She lowered herself into the chair beside me with a soft grunt. Her eyes were sharp as ever. "Something's wrong," she said. It wasn't a question. I hesitated. Grandma had always been perceptive. She was the only family member who had never treated me like an afterthought. "Maddie gave me an interesting gift yesterday," I said carefully. Grandma nodded slowly. "I saw. A DNA test." "You noticed?" "I notice everything, child." She patted my hand. "I also noticed how Maddie watched you open it. Like a cat watching a mouse." I looked at her weathered face. How much did she know? "Grandma, did you ever suspect that Dad might not be, that we might not be?" I couldn't finish the sentence. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "I've suspected for years. Your mother was never good at hiding things. But I kept quiet. Some secrets aren't mine to tell." My heart pounded. "Both of us? Or just me?" Grandma's expression told me everything. She knew about both daughters. She had always known. "Be careful, Frankie," she whispered. "The truth is a weapon. Make sure you're aiming it in the right direction." That evening, I visited my parents' house while they were still at post-wedding celebrations. I used my old key and went straight to the attic. The family photo albums were stacked in dusty boxes. I pulled them out one by one, studying pictures I had seen 1,000 times before. But now I looked with new eyes. There was Maddie as a baby, held by Mom. Dad stood slightly apart, his smile stiff. There I was 2 years later, wrapped in a pink blanket. Dad wasn't in that photo at all. I found pictures from family vacations, holidays, birthday parties. In almost every image, Dad stood slightly separate from us. Present but distant. Like he was playing a role he never fully embraced. Had he known all along? Had he raised 2 daughters who weren't his, staying silent for decades? I found a small box hidden behind the albums. Inside were letters. Old letters, written in my mother's handwriting. They were addressed to someone named Thomas. Not Uncle Thomas. A different Thomas. The letters were love letters. Passionate, desperate, full of longing for a man who wasn't my father. I photographed everything. The puzzle was coming together. Maddie had known about my parentage for years and kept it as ammunition. But she had never dug deep enough to discover her own secret. The following weekend, I attended a family brunch at Aunt Patricia's house. Maddie was there, still radiating newlywed bliss. She had clearly decided that her gift had worked. That I was silently suffering, too ashamed to speak up. I played along, acting subdued and distracted. But during the meal, I dropped my first hint. We were discussing family resemblances. Aunt Patricia mentioned that Brooke had inherited her father's nose. Someone else pointed out that Maddie had Mom's smile. It's funny how genetics work, I said casually. Sometimes traits skip generations entirely. Or they come from relatives we never even knew about. The table went quiet. Maddie's fork paused midair. What do you mean? She asked, her voice controlled. Oh, just something I read after doing that ancestry test, I said innocently. Did you know genetic markers can trace lineage back hundreds of years? They can show all kinds of unexpected connections. I watched a subtle tension spread across the table. Mom's hand trembled slightly. Dad stared at his plate. Maddie's eyes darted between our parents. Anyway, I smiled, the science is fascinating. You should read about it, Maddie. Since you're so interested in DNA. She didn't respond. But I saw doubt flickering behind her confident mask. Jenna called me 3 days later. I hadn't expected to hear from her, but I wasn't surprised either. Something about her behavior at the wedding had told me she was conflicted. Can we meet? She asked quietly. Somewhere private? We met at a coffee shop across town. Jenna looked nervous, twisting a napkin between her fingers. She didn't speak until our drinks arrived. I know what Maddie did, she finally said. I tried to talk her out of it. The DNA test thing. It was cruel. But you didn't stop her, I observed. Jenna's face crumpled. I've been her friend for 10 years. She can be wonderful. But she can also be vicious. I was scared to cross her. What changed? Jenna hesitated. I saw you at the reception. You didn't cry. You didn't run away. You just observed. And I realized you were planning something. I said nothing. Maddie doesn't know what she revealed about herself, Jenna continued. I saw the full results before the wedding. I tried to tell her, but she wouldn't listen. She was so focused on hurting you. I leaned forward. So you know the truth about both of us? Jenna nodded slowly. And I think you deserve to know everything Maddie has been hiding. Jenna told me everything over the next hour. Maddie had discovered my parentage 5 years ago. She had found the same letters I found in the attic. She had connected the dots and realized I wasn't Dad's biological daughter. But instead of telling anyone, she had saved this information. She kept it as a weapon, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy it. My humiliation at her wedding was supposed to be her ultimate victory. What Maddie didn't know was that Mom had had a second affair. A different man, a different time. The letters I found were about Maddie's biological father, not mine. She only read the letters about you, Jenna explained. She stopped looking once she found what she wanted. She never found the letters about herself. I sat back, absorbing this information. Maddie's arrogance had blinded her. She was so certain of her superiority that she never considered she might share the same secret. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Jenna looked down. Because I'm tired of being part of her games. She uses people. She manipulates everyone around her. And I can't do it anymore. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Thank you, Jenna. You've just given me everything I need. I started my subtle campaign the following week. Nothing obvious. Nothing that could be traced back to me directly. I posted on social media about the fascinating world of genetic ancestry. I shared articles about DNA testing, about how families were discovering long-buried secrets. I commented on how technology was making it impossible to hide the truth. My posts were public. Family members saw them. Friends saw them. Maddie definitely saw them. Within days, my phone buzzed with a message from Maddie. "Why are you posting so much about DNA lately?" I replied innocently, "Just found it interesting after your gift." "Didn't you?" She didn't respond. But I noticed changes at family gatherings. Mom seemed nervous around me. Dad avoided eye contact more than usual. Aunt Patricia kept giving me strange looks, like she was trying to figure out what I knew. The seeds of doubt were spreading. Nobody knew exactly what I was hinting at, but everyone sensed something was coming. Maddie tried to maintain her composure, but I caught her watching me constantly. Her smile was more strained now. Her confidence was cracking. I was patient. I had waited years for this moment. A few more weeks wouldn't hurt. Let her stew. Let her wonder. Let her fear grow. The next family dinner was at my parents' house. I arrived early, helping Mom set the table. She was unusually quiet, her movements jerky and nervous. I lingered in the hallway when I heard voices from Dad's study. The door was slightly open. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. "She knows something," Dad was saying. "The way she keeps talking about DNA and genetics. She's not stupid, Carol." "She can't know everything," Mom replied, her voice strained. "Maddie only told her part of it. But what if she figured out the rest? What if she found the other letters?" Silence. Then Mom's voice, barely a whisper, "Robert, what are we going to do?" "I don't know. I've kept quiet for 30 years. I raised both of them as my own. And now this." I heard footsteps approaching the door. I quickly moved to the kitchen, heart pounding. My suspicions were confirmed. Dad had known everything. He had stayed silent, playing the role of father to two children who weren't biologically his. That dinner, I watched my parents with new understanding. They were terrified. Their secrets were unraveling, and they didn't know who to blame. I wrote a letter to Aunt Patricia the next day. Not accusatory. Not revealing. Just heartfelt and carefully worded. I wrote about the importance of family. About how secrets can poison relationships. About how the truth, though painful, was always better than living a lie. "I've been thinking a lot about our family lately," I wrote. "About the things we don't talk about. About the silences that hang between us at every gathering. I believe that honesty brings healing, even when it hurts." I sent the letter by mail. Old-fashioned, personal, impossible to ignore. 3 days later, Aunt Patricia called me. Her voice was trembling. "Frankie, I received your letter. I think we need to talk." We met at her house. She poured tea with shaking hands. "I know about your mother's affairs," she finally said. "Both of them. She told me years ago, when she was drowning in guilt. I promised to keep her secret." "And Maddie? Did she know about both affairs?" Patricia shook her head. "Maddie only discovered one. The one about you. She never knew about herself." I nodded slowly. The web of secrets was becoming clearer. Everyone had known fragments. Nobody had the complete picture. Until now. The next family gathering was Grandma's 85th birthday party. The entire extended family was there. Perfect. During the toast, I stood up with my glass raised. Maddie watched me suspiciously from across the room. She sensed something was coming but couldn't stop it. "To Grandma," I began. "The matriarch of our family. The woman who has watched over all of us, through good times and bad times. Through secrets and revelations." A few nervous glances flickered around the room. "Grandma once told me that the truth is a weapon," I continued. "She said to make sure I was aiming it in the right direction." I've thought about those words a lot lately. Maddie's face had gone pale. "Family isn't about blood," I said, looking directly at her. "It's about love. It's about acceptance. It's about embracing people for who they are, not where they came from. Some of us understand that. Others still have lessons to learn. I raised my glass higher. To truth. To family. To Grandma. Everyone drank. But the tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Maddie's hands were trembling. Mom looked ready to faint. Dad stared at the floor. The message had been delivered. Now I would wait for the fallout. After the party, I watched Maddie step outside alone. She stood on the porch, clutching her purse, her perfect composure finally cracking. I followed her quietly. "Beautiful speech," she said without turning around. Her voice was hard. Very subtle. "I learned from the best," I replied. She spun to face me. "What are you doing, Frankie? What's your game?" "No game. Just applying lessons you taught me." Her eyes narrowed. "You're trying to turn the family against me. Am I? Or am I just asking questions you're afraid to answer?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "You think you're so clever. You think you've figured everything out. But you don't know what you're playing with." I smiled calmly. "Actually, Maddie, I know exactly what I'm playing with. I've read all the letters. Both sets of letters." The color drained from her face. "That's right," I continued. "I know about Mom's second affair. I know that neither of us shares Dad's blood. You thought you were exposing my secret. You never realized you were exposing your own." She stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing silently. "Good night, Maddie," I said, turning to leave. "Sleep well." The following weekend, I orchestrated my final setup. Another family dinner, this time at my apartment. I invited everyone. Parents, Maddie and Connor, Aunt Patricia, Grandma, Cousin Brooke. During dessert, I steered the conversation toward childhood memories. "Remember when we were little?" I said. "Mom used to take us to the park every Sunday. Dad was always working, but Mom made sure we had adventures." Everyone nodded, sharing their own memories. "I found some old photos recently," I continued. "And some old letters. It's amazing what you discover when you look through family history." Mom's cup rattled against her saucer. "There's a story in our family that nobody talks about," I said softly. "A story about choices and secrets and the difference between blood and love." All eyes were on me. "Dad raised 2 daughters who aren't biologically his," I stated clearly. "He knew. He stayed anyway. He loved us anyway. That's what a real father does." Dad's eyes glistened. For the first time in my life, I saw him clearly. Not as the distant figure in photographs, but as a man who had sacrificed his pride for his family. "But some people," I continued, looking at Maddie, "tried to weaponize the secret. They wanted to use it to hurt and divide us." The room was completely silent. After dinner, Jenna arrived as planned. Maddie's face twisted with confusion and betrayal when she saw her best friend walk through my door. "What is she doing here?" Maddie demanded. Jenna stood beside me. "I'm here because I'm done being part of your manipulations, Maddie." "What are you talking about?" "The DNA test," Jenna said quietly. "I saw the full results. I tried to warn you. You were so obsessed with hurting Frankie that you never read your own results properly." Maddie's confident facade was crumbling completely now. She looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally, finding none. "You set me up," she whispered. "No," I corrected. "You set yourself up. You planned to humiliate me publicly. You wanted to destroy my relationship with our family. You weaponized a secret that wasn't yours to tell." "But you did the same thing," she protested. "You just exposed everything." "The difference," I said calmly, "is that I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it to heal us. The secrets were poisoning our family. Now they're out. Now we can actually deal with them." Maddie had no response. For the first time in our lives, she had nothing to say. I asked everyone except Maddie to give us privacy. They filed out quietly, leaving us alone in my living room. Maddie collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. "You destroyed me," she said quietly. I sat across from her. "No, Maddie. You destroyed yourself." I just held up a mirror. She looked up, mascara smeared across her cheeks. "I've been planning this for 5 years. 5 years of waiting for the perfect moment to expose you." "And in all that time," I replied, "did you ever once consider that you might be wrong? That you might be the same as me?" She didn't answer. "We're both mom's daughters," I continued. "We're both raised by a man who chose to love us anyway. We had the same advantages, the same family, the same opportunities. But you turned it into a competition. You made me your enemy when I only ever wanted a sister." Tears rolled down her face. "I don't hate you, Maddie," I said softly. "I feel sorry for you. You've spent your whole life trying to be better than me. And it turns out we were always the same." She sobbed quietly as truth finally settled over her. Connor came to find Maddie an hour later. He looked confused and concerned, clearly having heard fragments of what happened from other family members. "Maddie? What's going on? Everyone's talking about DNA tests and secrets." Maddie couldn't answer. She just shook her head, unable to form words. I stepped in. "Connor, there are some things Maddie needs to tell you. About our family. About a gift she gave me at your wedding." His brow furrowed. "The ancestry test?" "She said that was just for fun." "It wasn't for fun," I said gently. "She used it to reveal that I have a different biological father than we thought. What she didn't realize is that she does too." Connor stared at Maddie. "Is this true?" She nodded miserably. "You knew about Frankie's parentage and tried to expose her publicly?" "At our wedding?" Another nod. Connor's expression shifted from confusion to disappointment. "Maddie, who are you? The woman I married wouldn't do something like that." "I was going to tell you," she whispered. "When? After you had finished humiliating your sister?" He turned and walked out. Maddie called after him, but he didn't stop. The perfect wedding, the perfect marriage, the perfect life she had constructed was unraveling strand by strand. The next morning, I met with Mom and Dad privately. We sat in their living room, the same room where Maddie and I had played as children. "I think it's time we talked honestly," I said. Mom was crying before I finished the sentence. Dad sat rigidly, jaw clenched, but his eyes were wet too. "I'm sorry," Mom whispered. "I'm so sorry for all of it. For the lies. For the secrets. For letting Maddie use this against you." "You knew what she was planning?" I asked. Mom hesitated, then nodded. "She told me months ago. I begged her not to do it. But she was determined. She said you needed to learn your place in the family." "My place," I repeated flatly. Dad finally spoke. "I've loved you both since the day you were born. Blood never mattered to me. I stayed because I loved your mother. I raised you both because you were mine, regardless of biology." "I know, Dad," I said softly. "I understand now. But I should have stopped Maddie," he continued. "I should have protected you. I failed you, Frankie." I reached over and took his hand. "You didn't fail me. You raised me. You loved me. That's what fathers do." We sat together as a family, finally honest, finally whole. The fallout from the revelation spread quickly. Word traveled through the extended family within days. Everyone had opinions. Everyone had questions. But the person most affected was Maddie. Connor moved into a hotel. He needed time to process the fact that his wife had deliberately tried to destroy her sister's life. Their perfect marriage was suddenly very imperfect. Maddie tried to regain control. She called relatives, attempting to spin the narrative in her favor. She claimed I had manipulated everyone. She said I had twisted the truth for revenge. But nobody believed her anymore. The family members who had witnessed my calm, measured approach compared it to Maddie's hysterical accusations. They remembered how she had smirked when I opened that envelope. They recalled years of her subtle cruelty toward me. Cousin Brooke stopped returning Maddie's calls. Aunt Patricia sided with me publicly. Even Jenna, Maddie's oldest friend, had abandoned her. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply went about my life, attending family gatherings, being kind to everyone, showing that I held no grudges. Meanwhile, Maddie attended the same gatherings and felt every judgmental glance. Every whispered conversation. Every moment of isolation she had planned for me was now hers instead. 6 months later, I stood at another family gathering. Grandma's Christmas party, surrounded by relatives and warmth and genuine connection. Maddie was there, subdued and quieter than I had ever seen her. Connor had eventually returned home, but their relationship was changed. She no longer dominated every conversation. She no longer commanded every room. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. For 28 years, I had lived under Maddie's shadow. I had accepted her cruelty as normal. I had believed I deserved less love, less attention, less respect. The DNA test had changed everything. Not because of what it revealed about my biology, but because of what it revealed about our family. Dad had chosen to love us. Mom had kept her secrets out of shame. Maddie had weaponized information without understanding its full power. And me? I had discovered my own strength. I had learned that I could face the worst truths about myself and survive. I had proven that I wasn't the weak, forgettable sister Maddie believed me to be. I walked over to where Maddie sat alone. "Merry Christmas," I said simply. She looked up, surprised. "Merry Christmas, Frankie." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's growth.